welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Rate and review the show at kevinmd.com/rate. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/follow. Today in the show, we have Francisco Torres. He is an interventional physiatrist, and he wrote the Kevin MD article, The Importance of Non-Judgmental Empathy. Francisco, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity.
We'll get into your article in a little bit. First off, share your story and journey to where you are today.
Well, it's an interesting story. I was born in Spain, and then when I was 5 or 6 years of age, I moved to Puerto Rico. So I finished my education in Puerto Rico Medical School, the residency at VA hospital. And then I moved to the United States. I did a fellowship at LSU as a musculoskeletal fellow. And then I moved to Florida, and I have been here for the last 30 years. And my road has been interesting because part of my reason I wrote this article is because growing up, I was exposed to so much anxiety. I was bullied because of my weight. I was ashamed of taking my shirt off. And all this trauma lasted for a long, long time in my life, during my medical school, my residency, and my career. So I got to a point that I don't know what to do. And I always thought that, people who had six packs and they were fit, they were just genetically gifted, and there was no, but deep inside when I was growing up, it was interesting. I always watched Charles Atlas. I saw this guy doing just isometric exercise. I said, one day I'm going to be like that. So when I turned 40, for my 40th year, I said, I have to change. I was like 50 pounds overweight, very sedentary. So I made an incredible transformation. I was able to get my six pack, but it only lasted 3 months. After that, I went back to the same pattern. And then eventually in 2008, one day I wake up with a chest pain going down to the arm. The bottom line, short story, is after $10,000 of tests, my cath was normal, and they said, you're overweight, you're deconditioned. So I said, I have to change. And that's when I got certified as an age management physician. I went through that course and I became a patient. And then once I changed, I became that person, and I was able to maintain that until just recently. I can tell you a little bit about that. Through the pandemic, I became a victim of that pandemic, and I went back and I had to redo it again. So I learned a lot. So going back to the article, it was interesting because, I have my book that shows my before and after picture, which is 50 pounds before, and then a six-pack, super athletic. But I thought that people could, see the message that I was not like that all my life. So this woman, a little bit disturbed, comes and sees me. I see her as a new patient, no complaint. But then she calls later, an hour later, saying that she wanted to see a new physician because I was too fit for her. And she was a 50-year-old with a broken body. And she said that I could never understand her. And I said, whoa, I've never been asked to refer a patient based on their appearance. I was in shock, so it made me think, am I just sending that message that I'm too judgmental, that they're not good for me, that I cannot understand them? And I said, I have to reevaluate how I'm presenting myself. So that's why I wrote the article. I said that, we as physicians, we have the obligation. They show that we want to care about health and be fit, but I think too much pressure, on the other hand, may intimidate these people. And I think that it's a fine line. So I kind of started reevaluating the way I present myself to the patients.
Yeah. So you talk more about that story in your Kevin MD article titled The Importance of Non-Judgmental Empathy. So like you said, you talk about the story of a patient who saw you and wanted to switch physicians because she thought that you were too fit. So what was your initial interaction with that patient like? And did she give any impressions that she was unhappy or unsatisfied or wanted to switch?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, she was very pleasant. The only thing with the typical patient, I do pain management. Pain all over, typical fibromyalgia type of situation, very difficult life, abuse, a social situation was horrible. And she was fed up. I understand her, but she never, ever say anything about the books. They never say about me personally. I thought it was just a perfect, normal interaction.
Okay. And then when you heard about that request, tell me about what that was like for you and what was your first reaction?
Well, it was painful, I have to say. I get a little bit emotional about that because I wrote my memoirs based on trauma and growing up in so much judgment. And when I see somebody telling me that, and I say, and I'm fighting that, I'm trying to walk away from that, and that she thought that I was going to do the same thing that they did to me. Oh, it was very painful, very painful.
So what happened next after
Well,
she made that request?
I never saw the patient back, obviously. I never pursued her. I never called her, but it changed my approach. And then, so I decided to start focusing more because, Kevin, I am the kind of person that I put in my mind to do and I do it. But then I start figuring this out is that my typical patient is not like that. They have a lot of excuses. They have a lot of situations. So I cannot be strict with them like I'm strict with myself. So I
Mm.
have to kind of mellow down my talk. And as a matter of fact, like I said, when I published my first book on weight, it was a typical weight loss book. You know, you follow the rule, you cut the calories, you know, and you lose the weight. But there are like 20,000 books out there on
Mhm.
diet that they say the same. So now what I decided to do is say, what do I do differently that other people don't do? And it came to me, I do a lot of psychology. I trick my mind in order to eliminate my desire to eat this or do that or the exercises. So I said, why don't I don't put this in a book? And that's what I'm going to, my new book now coming up next month will be the epigenetics and the psychology of weight loss, how to lose weight quicker. And
Mm.
that will be just using the psychology.
Sure, sure. So tell me what kind of specific change. You said that you had to reevaluate yourself. You think that this interaction was particularly painful for you. So in the exam room, tell me what kind of changes specifically did you make?
Well, I decided that first of all, I started greeting the patient saying, "Hey, this is myself." And then if they see the book, they say, "Hey, I had a very rough, you know, childhood." And even when they read my memoir, they say, "Oh my goodness, you were able to expose yourself. You're being brave." Yeah, because I have to tell them that there is a weak part of me. The first thing I tell them, I struggle, and I say, I know exactly where you are. It's very hard to change, but you know, and I kind of emphasize, say, I don't want you to have a heart event in order to change. I want you to do that before. So I try to explain to them in the beginning that I'm part of them. You know, I'm not an elite athlete or anything like that.
All right. So let's zoom out a little bit. So you're an interventional physiatrist. You also specialize now in age management. So walk me through a typical day of your practice. What kind of typical cases do you see and some of your treatments and therapies to help them?
Well, I have what finally after all this year, because my main practice is pain management, but what I
Okay.
did was incorporate that pain management with the wellness.
Mm.
So what I do is when I have my patient in pain, in addition to do the procedures, the epidural, everything that I normally do interventional, we talk about how we can approach their issue with their inactivity, which is a lot of them. They're not exercising, and their weight. So we talk about the story. You know, again, I use my example because many years ago I was told by a physician that I have a bad back and I could never ever run or do exercises. And at that time, you know, because I have a spinal stenosis, was whatever. And I tell my patient, look, probably my MRI is worse than yours. What I did was push myself, and there's way of understanding the principles, and I tried to guide them in that direction. And I have to say, I have a couple of my patients that they were completely, really, and they're going heading for surgery. They have lost a lot of weight. They're very athletic. I have one in particular that I'm going to mention in the book that he just lost like 60 pounds after bariatric surgery, and he's very happy. It's still doing the pain management. Obviously, I'm not promising a cure, but definitely much better, more functional.
So I'm a primary care physician. I do internal medicine, and of course, I see many, many patients with chronic pain. So, what are some tips that you could share with primary care doctors like myself that we could incorporate in the exam room? One of the things that you mentioned was incorporating wellness as part of your therapy. So, what are some ways that we can do that as well?
Well, the main thing is because I'm so big with exercise, I start to try to eliminate that fear about exercise because they
Okay.
all say feel threatened. I felt threatened going to the gym, being all these big guys doing that. So I started very, very mild with that. I said, hey, look, I know that you have all these limitations, but there's no reason why while you're brushing your teeth, you cannot squat. Or while you're watching TV, you can go in the back of the couch and go up and down, do wall slides, you know. So I try to make every single routine that they do during the day. And the reaction is, oh, I need to think about that. Oh yeah, I have time to do that when I'm washing the dishes. I can. So I go through trying to eliminate the fear of the exercise. That's my number one rule. Number two, I explain that exercise is not for weight loss. It's only 5% or 10% the most, but it's fantastic to maintain the weight once you lose it. You know, once you reach that goal, boom, you can just do a lot, eat a lot, and still maintain the weight if you exercise to a certain level. And then the other thing I tell them that is it has to be part of their life. you try to kind of, whatever I teach them is something practical. Like,
Mhm.
I know you have to go to a restaurant, but then when you go to the restaurant, start drinking the water first, don't get appetite. So we talk about daily things that they can do in their everyday life.
We're talking to Francisco Torres. He's an interventional physiatrist. His Kevin MD article is titled The Importance of Non-Judgmental Empathy. So, Francisco, again, just from the lessons that you learned from this encounter that you had with the patient, you talk about non-judgmental empathy. What kind of tips, again, can you share with clinicians about being non-judgmental in the exam room?
I think that we have to, at least for me, once I walk into the room, have a very clean mind, open mind, and not try to impose my way of thinking to the patient. I think that, and I think I haven't heard this in your previous podcast, we have to listen to the patient. You get 99% of the information just by listening to the patient. Sometimes we're in a hurry. We say, oh, you're fat or you're overweight. That's why you have pain. And that's not true. That's not true. It may be interfering with the recovery, but it's not the cause of your pain. So I always open-minded, like try to be sure that they talk to me before I start opening my mouth.
And my final question, what are some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
Again, I think that it's very hard to say that we are completely objective when we see the patient. I think I have to say I have my biases. I think that even though I may not open my mouth, my demeanor may be insinuating that I'm judging them. So I have to be so careful with that. That will be my thing. Be careful with your gestures, how you present yourself, how do you approach the patient, how do you greet them, and then be comfortable with them from the beginning, because if not, it's not going to be a good relationship.
Francisco, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity.